But before we do, can you guys hear me? Before we do anything, I would like to first kind of focus us and just kind of transition us into what we're doing, because we're coming from different spaces and different things. And I would like you to just kind of, ease down and just kind of remember why we're here. I'm gonna play this singing bowl just once, and I want you to just listen to the sound all the way until it stops, and then when it's done, you may open your eyes. When it's done for you, okay? So, here we go. I'd like to welcome us. Again, in the center here, we have a quilt that was donated to the Moran Center for this event. And on top of it, there's a bowl that I have I keep in my house, in my praying place. And in it, it has dirt that I collected when I was in Israel. And then the bowl that's on the very top, the round one, is dirt from my backyard in South Africa. And that's just a candle that I just really like. And what I want us to do, whenever you get distracted, whenever you get, your thoughts pulled away, I want you to just like focus your eyes on this and just focus on who's talking. That's how you bring yourself back, okay? We're here to bear witness, we're here to listen. This is a different kind of circle in that we're not all going to speak, right? We're here to listen, and there'll be time maybe in the end to be able to ask questions. But really, this is for the Holmes family to just tell us, how you got here, where you came from, what it's been like here, right? What has it been like, and we know it's different, right? It's one thing to know, things that people experience, but it's another to know like the little everyday nuance, the little everyday struggles, right? Every second by second that one goes through, when they go through the process, and we're here to hear that, and it's a wonderful thing, and I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank, the people that are here. Now, in the restorative circle, there are guidelines, right? And these guidelines are, you think of them as sort of guardrails, things that are going to guard our conversation, right? How are we going to have this conversation that we have here listed on this 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper? And I'm going to ask Amari to read for us our guidelines for this meeting here today.
So our guidelines are we offer each other, what we offer each other is what we expect to receive from each other. So basically it's saying what I give, I expect to receive. So we honor the talking piece. We use, I'm assuming Emma got the sticker as the talking piece. We honor that by if one person has it, everyone listens to the speaker with open heart and open ears. We offer radical listening, so basically listening for understanding and not response. We practice confidentiality. We honor that. We take that very seriously. What we say in here stays in here. We don't go out in the streets and talk about it to our friends and whatnot. It's a respected thing. Sharing is voluntary. No one has to share. You're not forced to. If there's something you don't want to speak on, you can pass, or we can switch to the next subject. But we also offer grace, and we ask for grace back in return. We also have a different list of guidelines that we started when we first came with our group of peace builders, to be accepted and to give acceptance. Everyone wants to be accepted. There's no judging here. To be present, to just show that you're in this circle and that you're really listening to what everyone has to say. Commitment, faith, hope, quiet within oneself. Again, that's just offering a listening ear. Believe in support, clear communication. So if there's something like you don't understand and you wanna like put yourself into that space, it's okay to ask for a little explanation to get there. Self-affirmation, focus, reliability. We really rely on trust and truth-telling. I think that's us for me.
Thank you, Mark. So we're gonna do a little check-in, but before I do, in the restorative circle, we use a talking piece. And a talking piece usually has a story. I'm not from here, obviously, there's people who embrace me here, people who make this place home. And some of them were, it came from places that I least expected. My wife has these two relatives, they've since passed on, Auntie Judy and Uncle Len. And I call them that literally, and they took me on, when I came in here. This walking stick, this is part of the walking stick that Uncle Len used until he passed away. And this here, Judy was a teacher, and she used to have this little desk, and he has an apple on her desk, the teacher's apple. And she had it for years while she taught on the west side of Chicago. And when she passed away, I took this. So I took this and I put them together because I felt like they fit for this. Like I said, I'm not from here, and my cultural sticks are important. So it was important that I did, if I'm gonna, get into something like this that's as sensitive as dealing with, because I look at it as we speak, my ancestors and your ancestors are coming together, and they're here to listen to hear what it is that we're talking about, right? I'm a cousin, and this is how I think of the world, and so this is how I imagine it's a very serious, sort of, gathering. It's a beautiful gathering. So this talking stick, we're going to use it as a way of communicating. So whoever has it is the person that's speaking, and we're going to pass it from left to right. And I'm going to ask our first question for this session today. So each one of us were asked to be here, right? And we are grateful that you're here. You were asked to be here, and you know what you're here for. And we want you to share your name, your role in the community, and what brought you to this meeting or to this moment. What brought you here? I've already explained. I came here. Came for a long time. The Holmes family is a very incredibly important family in Evanston, and it's important we document and keep these things for future so that people know these things. So I'm here for that. I'm here to provide the space. I was just really hoping to create a space that is really welcoming, a space that really has love and kindness. I want you to just like imagine that, that's what's holding this space, love and kindness, and that's, basically, that's the energy I've tried to create. So I want you to share your name, why you're here, and why you're here. I'm gonna pass it to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Gary. But what brought me here today is just very simple. I just wanted to be a listening ear to the stories and the trials and tribulations that you guys went through, or that your family went through from coming to Evanston and being here all these years. So I just really want to know that history behind it. Because it seems like you guys are a very integral part in Evanston, just one of those families that's been here forever, and everyone has gotten to know you guys, and you guys have branched out to different things, so that's a good thing. My role in the community, I work with the district. I'm a paraprofessional, so I work with kids with cognitive delays and stuff like that. So. And I'm also obviously considered with Emmerich and with the Moran Center. Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Janet, and I'm really, really pleased to be here today. It's an honor. It's really an honor to be in a community such as Evanston. So my role in the community is I was born and raised here, and I volunteer in this community. And for some time now, I've been in a program here with the Moran Center where we're training each other to be facilitators for radical listening, like we hopefully will do today with each other. And there's a difference between me listening and me really listening, not with my next thought, but I honestly listen to each thing. And maybe what you, just now I just felt a shiver. I love Dolores Holmes and her family, and I love Lois over there, that we grew up together. And I'm here at this circle because I'm honored to be here. I wanted to be part of this at this moment in such a time. I think I'll always look back on it. So thanks to everybody for coming.
My name's Amari. I am one of the lead peace builders of the Moran Center. What brought me here today is I just love Miss Dolores. She is one of my favorites, and I learned so much from her. She has so much wisdom, but I also grew up with Nico, so like coming from that background as having like living in the same years and seeing his like aspect on things, and then Miss Kim Holmes, Ross. She is someone I always knew growing up, between Family Focus and Fleetwood, and her knowing my mama, and just it's nice to see your aspects, y'all point of views on life, especially when I was growing up and then beforehand. So I'm so happy to be here, and I can't wait to hear your stories.
Hi, I'm Maurice. My purpose for being here is much like the rest of you. I have an extraordinary amount of love and respect for this family. This family, they make a difference, and even though we all know their names, they move quietly without asking for their names to be on everything. But there's a resilience, there's a joy, and I'm just thrilled to be here. And I am also recording because it was approved that we could record so that we could put it into the Shorefront archives. So I'm thrilled to be able to be part of that, to do that. I'm passing along to you. You're gonna say what brought you here and
Name, role, and what brought you
okay.
here.
My name is Dontrell Hatfield. I'm a restorative justice member for Moran. What brought me here is I grew up in Evanston and knew Ms. Holmes and Ms. Dolores since I was a kid. So I just wanted to definitely hear this, and Nico actually. So definitely interested in their story for sure.
And I've been here since 1992, and I'm adopted in the Holmes family. So I love Miss Holmes. I'm always there with Miss Holmes. You always see me with Miss Holmes. I'm here to learn more about Evanston. Although I lived here, I didn't know too much until she started telling me a lot and taking me a lot of places. So I'm here to learn more, and I'm happy she invited me here. And I love my Holmes family, and I'm ready to learn more.
Well, I'm Kimberly Holmes Ross, and I'm here today because my mama told me to be. And we do whatever Ms. Holmes says, we do, right? I've had several, and I love the work that Moran Center does. Let me just put that on record as well. So, and we have known each other way before Moran days, but yes. I've had several roles in the community in Evanston, from Family Focus to Chris Cafe to now Evanston Cradle to Career. And I was doing community work and not even knowing I was doing it, because I was always watching it, and just knowing this is what you're supposed to be doing, taking care of your community. So I'm thrilled to be here today.
Hey, my name is Nico. Obviously my mom is Miss Kimberly Holmes over here. My grandma is Miss Dolores Holmes. To piggyback off what my mom says, I'm here because my mom wanted me to be here. But I'm excited to hear everyone. I'm excited to be in this space. Also, I'm a behavior technician at Rice. I've been there for 6 years, seeing everybody from my childhood. It's great.
I'm Dolores Holmes, and I'm here because I'm really interested in the work of the Peace Builders, and they had a project. I'm gonna say maybe 4 years ago now.
Yeah,
And I was so excited about it because it was intergenerational. I love young people, and I love to hear their voices and their views. And when they started this project, I was happy to join in again. So that's my reason for being here, is because get so much from it, in terms of hearing young people and where they are. And I'm just really honored to do this. When we were discussing how it was gonna work, and Pam was saying, well, we needed to practice, and I said, well, Pam, we have 3 generations, and maybe we could be a good project for you. So that's how we all got here in terms of doing that. But I'm forever saying we can do this, but I had to talk to the kids first to see if they were willing. So here we are.
Good afternoon. I am Sharia Lois Wetlow, and forever Evanston member, or resident, I should say. I was born at Cook County Hospital for whatever circumstances were going on there, but I was raised in Evanston all my life, and I'm still being raised in Evanston. I am here because of this lady sitting over to my left, and her family, as well as that lady sitting over there in the purple, Mrs. Holmes and Mrs. Alexander. I'll give you their names. I love Evanston. I was raised here, and there's nothing too much that I can't say about Evanston, which probably that'll come out a little later on. I don't know how I got into this project other than by way of Mrs. Holmes. But I'm looking forward to learning and to being a part of this circle of family and friends, and learning. And I love young people. I have not always, I don't know exactly if I've done a lot of community work or not, because I've always worked. I was a teen mom, so I went to work immediately. My mother didn't want me to, but that was my responsibility. So I'll tell you a little more later. Have a good afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
You go.
I'm Tay. Hi guys. I am from Evanston, and I am a peace building member. And I am here because, well, I want to start with Emmerich for bringing me to the team and meeting these wonderful people, these wonderful ladies, and Miss Holmes. She's been an amazing teacher to me, as of other team members of mine, and I'm here to support and just listen and honestly just grow up with everyone here, because I was born in Evanston as well, and I grew up here as well. So anything that you guys say, trust me, it will stick with me forever, as I will be here. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Eva Coley. I'm also a trainee for a peace builder. My role in the community is quite a few things.
Yes,
I wanted to be in the circle because I wanted to see the project go forward, and although I know this family also, I've kind of adopted them. I don't know if they've adopted me, but I've kind of adopted them, so I'm really interested in them. And even though Ms. Holmes and I are about the same age, I've learned a lot from her. She calms me down. So I'm just grateful to be here and to see what I'll hear and what I'll learn.
Thank you for sharing. Hello everyone, thank you all for allowing me to be here today. And my name is Jordan Dorsey. I am Evastonian as well. Back in 2012, I actually moved back from Memphis after being there for 5 years. But I always went and visited as a child as well, so that's home as well for me. And being here today what brought me here today was just always being involved in my community. Being at Fleetwood, I was a shooting star back in the day, and then continuing to do work through my community, seeing people while coming up in my community, being involved, being around everywhere, hanging out, led me to want to just do more, and seeing people from different backgrounds and doing different things and being in different things. So I seen the potential in myself to do more and play a part in my community, and with the youth in my community, with the city of Evanston, and with the Moran Center, 2 years, since 2 years now, I've been with the Moran Center, and just to keep going and be a part of my community in any way I can. So, and I think it's just my passion as well. I don't know if it's just the Pisces in me, but I'm in healthcare, as you can see, I'm in the scrub, so, as well, so that's just me, I love helping, and yeah, and that's it for me for now. Thank you.
The places that we've been, like this quote here. And before we transition and go over to his homes and start asking specific questions, I want to ask Ms. Alexander Davis to read a little poem that has become part of our repertoire now, when we do this circles. Go ahead, Ms.
Bits and pieces, bits and pieces. People important to you, people unimportant to you, cross your life, touch it with love and carelessness and move on. There are people who leave you and you feel relieved and wonder why you ever encountered them. There are people who leave you and you breathe a sigh of remorse and wonder why they had to go away and leave such a gaping hole. Children leave parents, friends leave friends, acquaintances move on, but people change homes, people grow apart. Enemies hate and they move on. Friends love and move on. You think on the many who have moved into lazy memory. You look on those present and you wonder. I believe in God's master plan in lives. He moves people in and out of each other's lives and leaves his mark on the other. You find you are made up of bits and pieces of all who have ever touched your life. You are more because of it, and you would be less if they had not touched you. Pray God that you accept the bits and pieces in humility and wonder, and never question and never regret. Bits and pieces, bits and pieces.
I'm going to ask you questions.
Okay.
Listen, so Ms. Holmes, in 1939, I think this is when your family moved out here. In 1939, the war was breaking out, the Second World War, and you guys were moving to
Well,
Evanston.
not me, but my parents.
Right. So tell us the story of your family's arrival in Evanston.
My mom was a teen mom too. I was born in 37. And my mom and my dad, who was not my biological dad, but the only dad I ever knew, were married in 1939. And my father had relatives that worked on the place, what they called it at that time, on the North Shore. And so they were a young couple, and they offered them the opportunity to come to Evanston for job opportunities. So my mom and my dad came in 1939. My grandparents wouldn't let them bring me because they were too young. And they moved, when they came here, they moved on Garnett Place, which is really the only place east of Ridge where black people were. And they lived with a family named Rogers at that time. I know these stories from my parents. And began to get work and, that kind of stuff. And my dad joined the Navy because, as you're right, it wasn't wartime. And my mom, they brought me here in 1941, I believe it was. And we lived, I don't think I lived on Garnett. I remember we lived on Emerson. If you look at Emerson, where East Railroad is, the only house there is now is Betty Burns' home. You probably hear Tina Payton speak at council meetings all the time. But there used to be lots of homes around there before they did the research park. And that's the first place I remember living, that I can remember, the big brown house on the south side of the street is where we live. And then from there, we moved to Foster Street, the 2300 block of Foster, and that's really where I grew up, and in this community. So I remember starting out at Noyes School, but then by the time we got to Foster, then I went to Foster School, where I walked from Emerson and Foster to Dewey and Foster every day from school, because that's what everybody did. And we usually came down the bridle path, which ran along the canal bank. And I'm telling you that story is because I'm not a smoker nor a drinker. And the reason why, I think basically is, when you get to be a little older, maybe about 5th grade, we would walk along the bridle path, and there was these trees that had these long green things that the older kids would take and smoke. You remember that? And so, of course, you know, I had to be part of the crowd. So but I never put another cigarette in my mouth for the rest of my life, so I can't stand it. And so that was one of there are just certain memories that I have. And I just remember that as being one of the first times I thought, this is not for me. So from very early I did that. And I went to Foster School, and which was really wonderful. And I really wish you kids had the chance to have grown up in the 5th Ward that I grew up in. We had everything that we needed. I don't remember leaving the 5th Ward too much, except sometimes my mom and I would walk down to what everybody called Davis Street at that time. Downtown Evanston was just referred to as Davis Street. And, but we had our hospital, we had our Y, we had our grocery stores, we had our pharmacy, we had everything that we needed right in the 5th Ward. So I didn't come to a ward where they were bringing more people in. So all that is red audience happened before that. But it was such a happy place to grow up in. And we had lots of fun, lots and lots of fun. Went to the Y a lot. The Y was on Emerson, where the hotel is now. And especially on Friday night, because they played basketball and we just had a dance or something. And then we would walk back down Emerson Street, and there was a place called You Drop In, and they made the best fried bologna sandwiches in the world. So things like that just are part of my memories of growing up here, and I won't get into the rest of it because I think that's your second question. But I grew up in a loving, warm, caring community that everybody looked after you. And I remember if you, and I didn't get into trouble a lot, but if you, when you're walking from Emerson and, well, you're walking from Foster and Dewey back down to Emerson and Foster, if you did anything, by the time you got home, somebody had called and told your parents. And they may have already disciplined you already before you get there, and then you're going to get it again when you got home. But it was that kind of community, that kind of village that I grew up in, so you knew everybody, and everybody has a handle. And you'll hear me even call young people sometimes Miss or Mr. But it's just the way I was raised, and it was just a form of respect, an acknowledgement of maybe their age or position or what have you. And that carried over to me when I did community work. My father was very involved in the community. He was a commander when he got out of the service. He was the commander of the VFW, post 7186. And so we were always doing stuff in the community. So that's the way I grew up, knowing that it was my responsibility to do certain things. So that's where we were.
I can't help but see similarities between the community you described in and the community that I lived in South Africa during apartheid, right? When we were all segregated and all put in one place, you know, and everything that we had, you know, and I'm wondering what role of desegregation you think played in that, you know?
Well, desegregation was a big part of this community falling apart, but that came much later. That came after I even had children myself. But as long as we were all here, and I can remember pieces didn't have any idea what it meant until much later as an adult, because when things begin to change, I want to say big box things begin to come around the community, like over and people stopped using the mom and pop stores and the pharmacy. I remember Doc Morrison was right across the street in this little corner here. Then he moved up on Church Street, and then after that it just sort of went, that was our pharmacist. And the clothes of the wild, those things came later, but when I was growing up, they were very just vibrant. Mr. Small had a store right at the corner of Emerson and Dodge, where the well, it's not a cleaners anymore, but there's a beauty shop, where Clara. Right. Well, that corner was a grocery store. And then over at Darrell and Simpson was the Fleming's grocery store. And so, I mean, you know, you just went all over the community and used whatever you needed to use and be wherever you needed to be.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. We're going to go again, because I want to hear from the legal that they're ready for. What I want to know is, you know, like just taking off, you know, piggybacking off of what your mom just said, you know, there's 3 generations of you here, you know, and Ms. Holmes just described what it was kind of like, not all, but kind of what it was like, right, growing up here. Like, and then I want to know from you, you know, and then Nico, just like what, you know, how your experiences have been, especially, you know, as it comes with, you know, your black person, so racism and everything else in this white, you know, place, in this white area. You know, we want to hear about that. What was that like?
Okay. Well, I grew up in the 5th Ward, on McDaniel, where my mom still resides. And I just remember our neighborhood, just everybody knew, I knew every neighbor on our street. And, you know, we all played together, and it just was it was all boys basically. So I was really happy when some girls started to move in. I was way later when I was almost like junior high and high school. But just growing up and, like I said, playing together and feeling safe. I think that's what I've said a lot of times when people ask me about growing up here in Evanston. It felt safe. It felt good. And I think that was the reason I came back, because I was one of those teenagers at 17 who left and vowed never to return. But I did. And when I knew I wanted to raise my family here, and I think it was a good place for them to grow up. Different, but good. And you know, my mom said everything was in the 5th Ward. Now we did venture out of the 5th Ward. I went to King Lab, which is family focused now, which was the old Foster School, which was the then magnet school. So it was kids from all over Evanston who went to that school, and were all bused in, which was an experimental school, but everybody came in on the same playing field, same grounds. Whether you lived across the street or lived across town, you were bused. You got on that bus to go home and to get here. But we never knew it as a child. We never thought about where all these buses were going, right? Now all the black kids are on the bus, so you never should have thought, well, wait, something's going on here. But you know, we just all knew we were getting on these buses, and there was the divide there. So like I said, it was that's the first. Well, I was the second class to be integrated. I started kindergarten in the fall of '69. And I just remember having so many friends, so many different friends, you know, all colors, And remember going to their houses. Now, as a child, I wasn't really thinking, oh, this is really different from my house. I was just glad to be at my friend's house. But I did, you asked me about discrimination and racism, really experienced it at an early age, but didn't realize it till much later. Because you're a child, but I remember, we'll call her Jennifer, one of my friends. I was in kindergarten. I was 5 years old, and I was in kindergarten. And she invited me over her house. We were really good friends. And she's like, you can take the bus, you know, because she was on a different bus, of course. You can take the bus and come over. And we have this really special dinner on Fridays. Now, Jennifer's Jewish. So I didn't even realize then this is their sacred dinner on Fridays, right? Their Seder, I think we call it. And so we go over, and it is this really cool dinner, and they're doing all these things, and I'm there, right? And it was great. Went home. Fine. About a week later, I got a letter in the mail. I'm 5. I can't read. So I get a letter in the mail, but I can read my name. And I'm like, I got some mail. I got a letter. It's amazing. And I gave it to maybe my grandma, but it was you or my grandma. And right away, the mood just changed. And there were whispers, and I'm thinking, what's happening? You know, I'm thinking I got a birthday invitation or something. But it turns out Jennifer's sister wrote a letter and said, we don't want niggas in our house. Don't come back to our house. Now, it was a big thing. She got in trouble or whatever, but who does this to a 5-year-old? And I was so I didn't know the way later what the exact content of it was, but I knew it was something bad. I knew it was something off. And it was a big thing with Jennifer and her sister, and everybody had to come together and come to school. It was a big deal. But I didn't know how big a deal, like I said, until much later. So I did experience discrimination and racism at a really early age. From another child. Now, she was a child too. Now, she must have been maybe junior high. So maybe she was 11, 12. She was older than us. But that was tough. That was tough.
That's, it's the same question. It's what has your experience, like what are there similarities? What do you draw that's similar? What's different?
Can you speak up a little bit? I'm having
What did you draw on the different experiences? Like here, your mothers and your grandmas speak of the experience here. What has yours been like, and are there similarities that you're seeing? Like, what are some of the things that you're seeing?
My childhood was very unique. I grew up again in a caring community. Everyone knew who my people were, so I couldn't really get away with anything. So it also held me accountable, which I like. There was a certain bar that was expected to be met. I guess my first thing with discrimination, I always saw how everything was different. Like, I grew up in the 2nd ward, but I would see how the 5th ward, how things were built in the 5th ward. Then I go over to the 8th ward, and then a lot of my friends lived in Skokie, and I went to school at Walker. So I would just see how everyone just kind of went their separate ways. I was like, wow, this is segregated. Evanston has always been segregated. I learned about segregation at a young age. But yeah, that was pretty much my first experience.
But so you were in high school which years again, Nico?
2014. I graduated 2014.
2014. Yeah, and I remember in 2012. So 2012, you were a freshman, right?
No, sophomore.
Right. Sorry. In 2012, that's when Chicago has the highest number of gun violence, and we actually had a bunch of it happen. Evanston is really, 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 really small when it comes to black people. We're like a couple streets. If you put us all together, right? So when something happens, it like impacts like all of us, right? Everybody feels it, whether you pretend to or not. You know what I mean? How have you been able to navigate that? That you know what I mean? That period of time, like you described, what was it like for you? watching black men die and black boys die, in the community, and you're like a young black man too, growing up, and just, you know what I mean, did you feel sick? Like, what was that like for you? What was it like for you?
That during that time, that's when drill music came out, and a lot of the hip hop industry kind of was Chicago just pretty much divided up and everything. But Evanston, what really impacted me kind of was the death of DJ Coleman. It hit kind of close to home because it happened like so close, not from where I lived, but just seeing that, being a part of that, and how it impacted so many people. And I was like, it's not really safe out here. So me and my crew of friends, we just kind of always stuck together. We always walked each other home, kind of building that community, getting home safe and everything. And yeah, we just stuck together.
And it wasn't acceptable in your family, so.
No.
That's something that, right, something that got me. I'm a father, and ever since, I'm raising a young black boy, it's biracial, and it comes with its own set of problems. So I often, and I work with young men, and that's my biggest crutch, this Holmes.
I want to speak on discrimination because I didn't mention that.
Yes.
As I said, I grew up in the 5th Ward and went to foster school. And there was a system at foster school where when you reached 6th grade, they did some kind of testing or something. And if you passed, I guess, you got to go to Haven or wherever you lived closest to. Some people went to Nichols. I was able to go to Haven School. And that's when I really began to experience, and not even realizing what it was, but then when you show up in the classroom and there's only 2 people that look like you, then you begin to feel the pressure. Never felt any of that at Foster because we're all black and we're all together. But in 6th grade, there was a unit that they taught in terms of family trees. And so we all had this assignment, and we were all to tell where our families came from. And so I went home and worked on mine and brought it back. And of course I had Irish as a part of it because that was my grandmother's, whom if she was sitting here, you wouldn't be able to tell from another white person because that's how she was. And she had told these stories of her father and that kind of stuff. So I knew that there was Irish in my family, and I put that down. And American Indian and African, and that was who made me up. That's why I was made up. And when I turned it in to the teacher, she gave it back to me. She said, "You have to redo this." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because you can't be Irish." And I said, "Oh my God," but that stayed with me all my life. Up until, it's been about maybe 5-6 years ago. And of course I've told this story to my family for years. And my granddaughter decided to do 23andMe, and what pops up? I'm telling you, after all these years, and then there it is in my DNA. And the first thing I thought about was Miss Sloan, the teacher who had told me that. Of course. And that was, but the trauma of that stayed with me. You know how something's buried into your system? And that was my first experience.
How would you say that impacted you, Ms. Holmes?
Well, I mean, evidently I was traumatized by it because it stayed with me all these years and I've never forgotten it. In terms of being rejected, in terms of that, of course, black people, we're all a bunch of mutts because we're all mixed with whatever, if we just understand it. I remember Hecky Powell got in trouble for using that word, but it's very true. Also at Haven, I became really good friends with a girl named Diane Phelps. And we were the two tallest girls in our class. And you know, when you're tall, the boys come about right here. And because they don't grow sometimes as fast. And Diane and I were really good friends. And I mean, we were good friends from, I want to say maybe in the 6th grade all the way up to graduation. She would come to my house, I would go to her house. She lived up on Hartsel. And then when we graduated and went to high school, everything changed. And because when you got to high school, you had to go with your own folk, and it's as segregated now as it was then. The black people went to one area and the white kids went to another. And so I remember that, and Diane and my relationship changed, and I remember she said to me, well, my mom says that I have to be more with my own people now. And that was very hurtful. I remember that. So I have 3 things. And then the last one is when I graduated from high school, I could type 75 words a minute. And Mr. Carpenter, who was my typing teacher, had told me to go to Washington National for a job interview because he felt like I could get a job there. So I can remember myself very clearly. They were called sheath dresses, and I had a light gray one that had a white border that went all the way down, and I had black patent leather shoes and my little white gloves and all that, ready for this interview. Cute. And I was cute, yeah. And I went, and the lady was very polite, and she did the interview and everything, and then when we finished, she said to me, well, we have a position for you in the janitorial department. And I said, I was smart enough to know that I didn't belong in no janitorial area, that's for sure. And I left there, why didn't she see me? Why didn't she know that I could do this stuff? I mean, I typed for her and I did all the stuff, so I knew I could do the job. I was so hurt. Now, Washington National was on Chicago Avenue, where Whole Foods is. And I walked back up to Davis Street, and we walked everywhere then. And I'm walking west on Davis, and I saw a sign in the Weeboats store. At that time, Weeboats was at Benson and, well, not quite Benson, but Benson and Davis. And it's where, I guess it's at, I'm going to say United Way, but downtown Evanston, those office buildings right there on the south side of the street, before you get to the train stop. And they had a sign in the window. And I walked in there and applied for a job and got it that day in the accounts receivable department. So those are 3 things that, when you talk about trauma staying with you, you know, you bury them, but they're there because that was so impactful. Number 1, on my self-esteem in terms of being told what I was good enough for. Being rejected by a really, really good friend. We hooked up years later and talked about how it felt for her and how it felt for me. Now the other thing I wanted to talk about for a minute, because I mentioned to you about redlining, but I do remember us moving, you know, we lived in an apartment and all that, and my father was always telling me, make sure you buy property, you buy your own house, and blah, blah, blah. And that was, of course, that was by the 60s, and I definitely remember the kind of loops that we had to jump through in order to purchase our home. And we pushed it in 1960, well, we started in 61, we moved there in 62, and where I'm still there now. My mother-in-law lived at the end of the block in one of the townhomes, and they had built 2 little houses right before you get to the townhouses, and we were buying the second one. And it was only because she already lived over there, number one, that we got to meet the developer who was doing it. And, I mean, we had to do all kinds of craziness, now that I think about it, before, you know, we were able to purchase a house. And, it was not fun, but we purchased a house and the town is still there, so. Evanston has always had, that line, you know, even in the Fifth Ward, in terms of purchasing, getting a loan, all those kinds of things. You had to go through all kind of hoops to do that. And my husband at that time worked for there was a bus company, and he worked at the bus company, and I was still working at Weebo, because he had moved downtown, and I actually took the train usually from Evanston down to State Street, and I want to say maybe Madison is where Weebo's was located downtown. So yeah, so it wasn't that we didn't have the funds, it's just that we were black, and that was the issue.
And Ms. Holmes, you didn't listen to the teacher, which is wonderful that you didn't, even though it traumatized you, you moved and you did things, and you were part of like really, you know, the machine that like, you know, is fixing or attempting to fix Evanston, like you've been involved in that at those higher level, you know, profession. So how is that part of it, you know, it's the part where you work politically, you know, I'm from you became a politician, and you did a lot of things for the
Never a politician. I'm not a politician.
Okay,
Never
tell us
have
more.
been. I'm a public servant. And as I said, I learned that from my family, from my dad, from my mom, in terms of how you took care of your community. In August 2007. I stayed there for 18 years. I was supposed to be there 3 months, and I stayed there for 18 years. It was absolutely amazing. Amazing to know that at the end of the day, you made a difference in somebody's life. Whether you listened, whether you connected them to a resource, you did something to make somebody's life a little bit better. It just was everything for me. And like I said, I stayed there 18 years. And when I left, it just was time to go. And it just something in me was like, you know what, it's just time to move on. Didn't know where I was going. But I left, and I put out an email, because in 18 years you network with a lot of people. And said, you know, I'm leaving Family Focus, here's my new email. I got an email back within an hour asking me to come down to Orr High School, which is on the west side of Chicago, and build a teen parent program for them. So I was like, give me a week, give me a week. And I went down there and stayed a decade. And it was amazing, but knew it was just time to go again. I was like, this was my last school year. And you talked about gun violence. So I was there from 2007 to 2017. And gun violence was rabid. And it split over into Evanston, but in the city was just, it was, breathtaking. So not only students getting shot, but students getting killed. And in the 10 years that I was there, I attended 12 funerals. And I think the last one is what really got me, because the student was literally outside of school. This was the first time it had happened in such close proximity to the school, and that was about 8 in the morning on the way to school. So we had an immediate lockdown, but because most of us were inside, but some were, it was 8, so some were still outside, and it just really, I was like, this is my last school year. This is it. And again, never know where I'm going, just, step out on faith. And I left that June, and I think in September, someone told me about a community engagement position at Evanston, Cradle to Career. And I read the job description and said, this is in my wheelhouse. It was the last day to apply. And I applied for the position. And I went there part-time. And I've been there since, and I've built a few, I think, great programs there. And I was recently appointed executive director. Larissa's mad I didn't tell her, but I'm just,
It was a recent appointment. I've been there a long time. I've been interim before, but I'm just excited to be able to be back in my community and hopefully making a difference.
Nico, we're gonna move over to you, but, and we're gonna ask you the same questions, similar questions, just what has got, now you're talking about what your experience was like, especially in terms of discrimination around that kind of stuff. But just like your, experience as young members coming up in the world now and young professional, what has that experience been like for you?
In high school, man, it feels so long ago. But in high school, I always had good grades. I was on honor roll all 4 years, National Honor Society. So I kept my grades up. I had a small circle of friends that we just kind of, still hang out to this day, all known each other 20 plus years. Discrimination didn't really happen until I got to college. I went to school in JJC, Joliet Junior College, first. I was the president of Brother to Brother there. Just led amazing young brothers down. Yeah, it was amazing. But the story was we were doing an event at the YMCA in Joliet, and we all got on our red shirts, and because that was our color. We all wore our red shirts, and at the time I had kind of, I don't know what was going on with my hair, just had a curly look, and a white woman came up to me and said, "Hey, how do I do my son's hair like that?" And then I just looked at her like, I don't know what you mean by that, but when I processed it, she was like, "Oh, how do you get, the curls and everything?" So I guess that was my first experience, and also I was always on the bigger side, when I come into a small space, people clutch onto their belongings a little tighter, lock the door as soon as I go past, but just really microaggressions as far as that. But yeah, my high school experience was dope. I love those guys. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's amazing, man. That's good. I remember meeting with you when you were doing the Brother.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do something here in Evanston, but it didn't work out. And then in terms of your work, your work experience, what is that like here in Evanston?
Oh man.
Volunteering, summer jobs, you know what I mean? Just like that whole teenage year, what is that like? Because it seems like for you, most people recognize you. They know who you are, you know what I mean? Like right away, you were watched all the time. So
Yeah.
you had to make sure that, you were, you had people that were on you.
Yeah.
Because you were being recognized.
Yeah, it kept me responsible. That's the one thing I will say. As far as it helped me kind of build a name for myself, because when I got out of school, I did the YOU, and YOU, it taught me a lot. Then I worked with, then just went straight to AmeriCorps, and then from there it was Rice.
But you went to, you worked at the city first, because you worked at the
freshman year I worked at Mason Park as a park assistant. Just cleaning up the park, making sure families got what they needed as far as the food service and everything. And then after AmeriCorps it was Rice, and I've been there for 5 years now. I love it. Just serving kids who've been pretty much written off, and just getting them the help they need so they can transition successfully into the next part of their life.
I appreciate it.
Can I say, I just,
okay,
I just wanted to say one thing, because when you asked Nico about discrimination and about when you really became aware, because I talked about a story that was when I was 5 years old, so of course that affected me, but something that really affected me and really, I want to say, made me more aware of, you have to really stand with your people, because growing up as a Black young person in Evanston, or Heavenston as it sometimes can be called, you can say, and I was on that bubble where, everything was great and there's no racism, or everything is really cool, because you're not really tuned into that because you having fun with your friends and your grades are good and things are going good. So these little microaggressions, because you're a child, you're not really aware of. So it has to be, really kind of bigger and in your face. So again, I was maybe 17 because I graduated high school early. I graduated in 3 years and left early, which I advise no one to do because you're just not mature enough to do that. But I did, and I went to school, and I was in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, of all places. Never even knew this place existed, and I thought it was just jeans, right? But no, it's a real place. It's a real place. And I was with some friends, and I think it was me and Alice, who's from Evanston. She's a black girl, and one of my friends who is mixed. And it's so funny because this is in the 80s, remember? So she called herself a mulatto, which I was like, okay. But no, she calls herself that. So this is what we called her. She was like, I'm a mulatto. I'm like, okay. You never heard of that. I'm going with that. I thought she was mixed. But anyway, so we're all walking. And out of the window, they're like, niggas, niggas, niggas. And I'm turning around like, who are they talking to? They could be talking to, I'm just really, and she's like, and this is my mulatto friend. She's like, they're talking to us. And we gotta do something. She's like shaking me, and we gotta do something. And I'm like, do something, I'm clutching my pearls. Do something. She's like, yes, we gotta do something. And I'm like, yeah, and it really, I felt so bad. I'm like, I'm the one who should have really been leading this charge. I think we have to do something, but it had never been my experience. And it just really made me aware, turned the light on. Like, this is not just happening, this is happening to you too, not just to other people you see, on TV or the news, or it's happening to you too. And I'll just never forget that. She's like, they're talking to us, and she's like, we gotta do something. So we did a few things on campus. We won't talk about that, through the years, but it really made me aware that who I was.
And like I said, you can go if you feel like you want to say something, you can say. But I want to ask, one more question, because I know that we're pressed for time, and I can't stand that this thing's at the time limit, because I feel like we should be in the little room, and there should be tea just coming in.
Yeah, me too.
And this is about place.
I can use some tea.
Like I feel like that's what it is. This home's like really open to you, in hearing like the stories of your story, your grandson, just what surprises each of you in these, and can you reflect just on some of the differences or similarities that you've noticed? Are there any differences or similarities between the experiences, of your family here?
Well, one of the things I'm thinking about, Kimberly, and I don't know if she's buried it or not, but when she graduated from high school, she wanted to go to Southern Illinois, and her dad, who was a truck driver, and I drove her down there, and we went real early because I knew we need to get there to get the best side of the room because she was gonna have a roommate. Didn't know who that was. And we got there and got her all settled up. So by the time her roommate got there, we were already there and happy and waiting to receive the roommate. And the roommate, another young white girl, and her parents walked in. And when they walked in and saw us, you could just see on their faces what was happening. But of course they came on, they were being polite and all that. But they went right to the RA. And they said their daughter wasn't gonna sleep in a room with the niggas. And of course arrangements and stuff was made, but it had an impact on her. She cried for 6 weeks. I was determined that she should stay. She had not experienced that kind of thing at the high school and what have you. Not that she hadn't had some discrimination, but it wasn't the same. And I remember my husband came home, he'd been on the road, And he came home, and at that time, we could park on both sides of the street on McDaniel. He put that truck on the other side of the street, walked through the house, asked for the car keys, and I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to get my daughter. And which he did. He went and got her that. And I was saying, well, she needs to stay. She's got to learn this because it's going to, you know, happen. And I understand that we had protected them because we had experienced stuff that we didn't want our kids to experience. So you did everything to remove all of that stuff that was happening, you know, in the community.
What's wrong with that?
And no, it's nothing wrong with it, but it's you call yourself protecting them, but you have to prepare your kids for what's going to happen in this world because it's a real world, and discrimination has always been here, and we have to understand that we need to make sure that we have the kind of I want to say. I don't want to say a fence around them, but you want to make sure you provide that for them. And I want to go back to one thing when you talked about the gangs and the violence beginning in, actually it was 2010 is when it began. And, but in 2014, the mayor who was Liz Tisdall at that time, and there was an interim pastor at Second Baptist, her name was Pastor Avery, and they called together a community gathering to find out what Evanston was going to do about all the violence that was happening here in Evanston. And of course, as a representative of Family Focus, I had gone to that as, you know, just to be there and to help in whatever way that I could. And well, no, by then I was alderman. That's why I was there, because I was the alderman at that time, which is a whole nother story in terms of how I got to be alderman. But I said, okay, I don't know what we can do, but I know that our base in the Black community is a church. So I'm willing to try to pull all the pastors together from the 5th Ward to see what we can do. And Pastor Cherry said, okay, I'll help you. And that is the beginning of Evanston On It. And this is their 10th year of starting, and we pulled it together from that and tried to figure out what it was that we wanted to do. We concentrated on the youth and to raise money so that they could have more summer jobs. And to date, we raised $78,000 to help with that. And that has been remarkable.
We keep them busy every summer.
Absolutely.
Every summer because of that.
Every summer.
And I want to cut you up and tell you something that I learned from you, from those incidents. I just moved to Evanston around that time. My son was born in 2008. I was not working with children. See you and Ms. Tisdall. And my kid was at home protected. My kid, but I didn't let people cuss around my kid when he was growing up. I didn't let people do, like, that's how extreme I was, right? And yet he's gonna go and be in the world, right? And you protected your kid in the same way, and yet you were showing up in the corners, not to solve it, but to say this is weird, and you should not just be, right? And that's why I show up in those corners. I don't need to know. I show up at funerals. I don't need to know who it was. This is a kid from our community, and I learned that from you. And I do that till this day, and I'll never stop doing that, and I thank you.
Right.
But then we continue the same questions.
But no, speaking of funerals, I mean, I can't tell you how many kids whose families we buried and doing what needed to be done, you know, from that work. And helping them to, because they don't have any church etiquette at all. And so, because they don't have no church experiences, so they'd get up and walk around. You know, we'd be jumping up, my staff and I'd be jumping up, you can't do that in here. That's not acceptable behavior. And surprisingly, kids had a respect for that. I never had any issues, and you know, they would start to fighting outside the building, whatever, we run out there and jump right in the middle of it. And then, aren't you afraid you're gonna get hurt? No, I'm not. these kids know us, they know who we are, they know we love them, we care about them. And when you give respect, you get respect back. When you give love, you get love back. And many of our kids who went to jail did gangbanging, we knew that. But they didn't bring that into our building. They didn't bring none of that into our building or into our presence. I could be driving down the alley and get to Simpson, and there'd be something going on at Simpson and Darrow. I'd stop my car. What is wrong with you all out here acting this way? You know better, you know. So we had those kinds of experiences, you know, in terms of kids who were in some places not acceptable or desirable. I have a bad habit of asking kids when they would tell their names, I want to know your last name, because I want to know if I know your family. And a lot of times I do know the families that I might say, or are you related to? I may have had their mom at Family Focus in the primary prevention program or teen parent program or in our extended family program, what have you. But you make that connection. When you make that connection, there's a respect that goes with that. So that has been one of the real benefits of being here in Evanston and growing from it and knowing different families, and that still happens, you know, today. I remember that job, I said, hey, what's your last name? I knew his mother really, know his whole family, but I know his mom real well. A lot of love for her, so, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Ms. Kim, we're gonna ask you the same question. What are similarities? What are some of the similarities?
I think that what we've had is the desire to work in our community, take care of our community, give back. We've always known to give back. My kids have been taught. And I'm real happy that it's passed down to my grandkids, which means that my kids learned it and they're passing it on to their kids.
Right. They say, what's wrong with black boys? And somebody says we need to love them fiercely. Love them so much that even the thought of doing wrong is enough to kill them. That's how much. That's the kind of love we need. There's nothing wrong with them. We need to love them. You love them, you'll see it. You know, go ahead.
I agree with the love, but I'm so glad you owned about being maybe overprotected or growing up in that, because it and for whatever reasons, and not a bad one, and you know, I think you do not want your kids to hurt or maybe experience the same things, but at the same time, for me, I don't think I was able to connect or connected later with my blackness and kind of who I was as a black woman. I just was a woman, you know, and I kind of missed those things because I just thought, you know, everything was great and everything was good, you know, and I watched my mom in these big roles and doing these things, so I never connected my blackness with negativity or anything negative. So I think maybe I know I was more open with my children, sometimes very too open, but I'm very open about the world and what's going on and things that were, only because I found out I wanted it, you know, once I became an adult. As a child, I wasn't. I was just a child. You're in a child's place. This is, you know, what children do, which is fine. But I think that was a difference in our parenting styles. But as far as similarities, and as far as the importance of giving back and loving your community and taking care, I think it's almost natural in the part of what we do, I mean, what you're supposed to do. Supposed to show up for your community.
Similarity. Or whatever is on your mind, my brother, that you want to speak, whatever you want to say, you know what I'm saying? You can say it if you want.
Well, I get my giving back from my grandmother and my mom. I've just seen them do it for so many years. I've always had representation just around my house, just with all the African art and all the pictures and everything. So I had a strong sense of who I was at a young age. I always saw my mom reading books that encouraged me to read. That was my first book I ever read. Well, I count it as my first book I ever read, but came in 3rd grade. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And yeah, I just always had a sense of belonging, you know. That's where I get it from.
I think that we are a family that know who we are, and we're comfortable with that.
Well, the name Holmes is synonymous with service and everything. You know, it's when you say the Holmes family, you know, that's why you have one thing. You know, go ahead,
I know, because I know we're wrapping up, but I don't want to close the circle without bringing my father and my grandmother into the circle, who just, you know, such a big part of my life and a part of knowing who you are and a part of just loving really hard. My grandmother loved harder probably than anyone I know, was selfless and taking care of me and my brother. And so I think I learned how to love from her and love hard and love without expecting anything back, just loving to love. So I wanted to bring her into the circle. And my father, who was so self-confident and so good with who he was, Wild Bill, he just gave me that self-assurance where you can walk into any room and be you. And I think I always felt that, and I think so whenever that challenge came with me, you know, and someone called me the N-words, it really jolted me, because I've always just been really good with myself, but I've always watched him never step out of who he was, no matter where he was. So I didn't want to leave the circle without bringing them into the circle, so that's all.
I was gonna ask us in the beginning to imagine, you know, them or what we want in the next world.
Growing up in Evanston, and I'm still here, it has been a bittersweet sometimes experience. I love Evanston, and we've done a lot. We still have a lot more to do. But I've seen things change over the years. And of course, Lois and Janet could attest to this, you know, and seeing them growing up in this community and the kinds of things that we did, the kinds of things that are much more lenient now. But that's probably with our growing up. And just like Kim just brought my mom and my husband into the circle, they're already here because they're always with me. In that, but I also want to bring up the foundation of growing up in this. I didn't mention this, I talked about everything that we had. But the two biggest things that we had was our churches and foster school growing up. Foster school was a basis for where people met. We went to the Y's and stuff like that, but it was there. And of course the church was the other part. And when I was growing up in Evanston, we went to all the churches because that was all we had to do. You can go to the movies on a Sunday afternoon, maybe. But they had BTU, they had all kinds of activities, and that's the thing that's missing now. The churches used to have all kinds of activities for kids to do, and you would go and do that. And every year, all the churches got together and they had a picnic. And we would go different places, and everybody have a bus and go there. It would just be a gathering of community, but they're more segregated now, you know, in terms of doing their own thing. So I've seen that as a big difference, and that's just here in our Black community, because it wasn't like that growing up for me. But it was a base, and I still depend on that base, because it's where I've been grounded in.
It feels like the rug was pulled under the Fifth Ward.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
It feels like the rug was pulled under the Fifth Ward when the school.
Yeah, oh, well, the Coastal Foster School was the beginning of our community deteriorating. I mean, it just took everything away. So that, that happened in, I want to say 70, I know it's in the 70s, I can't remember the year right at the moment, but yeah. And then everything just fell apart, so it was just like
Not
crumbling.
in the 70s. It's Paulson School.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, that was, what you think? No, I'm trying to think of when the lab school came to Foster School. Is 62?
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Oh, a long time ago, yeah. And so that began to crumble, it was like dominoes, domino effect, it began to fall and everything. There was a little store on Emerson Street, where Jacob Lake is now, called Jack Moss's. And it was probably I think it was probably the last one to go. I can't remember now, but I do remember that. There are just so many wonderful memories that I have of growing up here. But I also think about job opportunities. I think about purchasing a home. I think about all the things that were so difficult that didn't have to be. That's why I said it's bittersweet having grown up here. And to see my community not take care of each other like we used to, that's very hard for me. I don't like that. Nothing I can do about it, but we took care of each other. And people don't seem to do that anymore. They have that same kind of caring, that same kind of need to take care of each other, simply because of who we are.
Just a desire.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's missing.
Thank you.
I just want to say something real quick about church, and then we can wrap up. Because I too grew up in church, but when church was full and active, and we did everything at church. I had my church friends, my church cousins, my church boyfriends. Everything happened at church first. And it was not as much for my kids, but it began to deteriorate, and now I don't see hardly any youth at church, which is sad because you were talking about safe, it just felt like a safe place. And you got to have all these experiences there and these friends there, and of course you learn about Jesus, so you do all that good stuff. But church is missing, and the pandemic didn't help. And when everybody went to virtual church, you go now in churches, there's so many empty seats. So I think about Evanston. I do think about church. I think about, like I said, just being loved and being safe. And I hope that it continues in this community. I hope we can find a way to continue, but it's hard to buy a home here. It's hard it is hard to sustain yourself here. And the generations behind me are, having a tough time staying in Evanston. People are looking outside of Evanston to buy homes, and people who want to live here, who grew up here, can't afford to live here, and that should be.
I want to thank the Holmes family. I feel like that's where our culture and our history and our norms and everything is, and I feel like they need to be shared and with the rest of us. So I'm going to ask us, as we close, just to reflect on just what we've experienced here. More specifically, just what are you taking away from this experience? What this experience taught you? And really, why are these kind of spaces important for the community? They're important for me because this is what we get to know. Ever since I've been hanging out with this lady, Miss Holmes, Miss Coley, and Miss, Alexander Davis, I haven't seen my mother since 2004. So one, it's like being in front of my mom. When Miss Holmes says something about the hat, I want to take it off, but I'm going wrong. So I'm not supposed to wear a hat in the house. I'm not supposed to. So when she says that, it was my mom like, geez, what do I do? So I hear you. I appreciate having you in my life. You have no idea. So for me, this is like the most important thing that the community can do is to come and hear listen, it's not that hard to do.
Thank you. Again, my name is Arius. Thank you guys for letting me hear your stories and come here to kind of get to know you guys a little better. I know.
What a wonderful example of love, commitment. I miss your husband's motorcycle going through the alley, and these other two knuckleheads that do not like that anymore, as she knows. But anyway, thank you, Nico. Thank you so much, Dolores, for sharing all this with us. And if nothing else, I think you rekindled a whole lot of things for me. We still live in the same neighborhood. We still trying to do the same thing, and I learned it from you to try to take care of our neighborhood. It's very difficult when you get old like this, and you try to get the younger ones to understand. If you care for each other, if you're doing okay, then I can do okay, and vice versa. It isn't all about me. So.
I just really love to hear these stories. And I always talk about working together. We have to know each other, and it just makes me know Dolores a little bit more. And I respect that, and I appreciate you taking the time out for you and your family to come share these stories with us. I think I take away a lot, especially the fact of the view of seeing how different. So I always hear the stories about. I ain't trying to put y'all ages out there, but, Miss Kim, you and my mom are the same age, so I always hear the stories about when my mom was growing up and in your time frame and whatnot, but I never really got to hear them stories of my grandma growing up, so hearing Dolores' take on how she came up and how segregated things were, but how close together the Black community was, I really appreciate that, because you don't get to see that, or you don't get to hear that too much. I know that, it started to break down as soon as my mom got older, and how the communities kind of changed and separated in ways. So I really enjoy hearing how close we were and how possibly we could get back to that maybe one day.
We talk so much about the difficulties, but I also know that there are so many joys in what you've done in setting a foundation in many ways to give opportunities to so many is, to me, about light. I can put this down, I need to film it. And, we should have never been in a space where there was redlining. We should have never been in a space where we didn't have opportunities, where we couldn't buy, where they moved our homes, where, your friend separated from you, and I know the story where you met up with her years later, right? But our hearts have been broken so many times, and to me, the biggest heartbreak is that when we were growing up, we were at the height of the African American, the Black community in Evanston, with about 30%. We're down to 16% and going south. And someone said to me in some ways, do you all think you're gonna save Evanston? It's no, but we're gonna fight going down. And I appreciate your fight. I appreciate your love. I appreciate all that you do to be transparent and share. And I am so grateful to be here. So thank you always. I call this, I just have to say real quickly, I call this one up all the time. And there is never a moment that she doesn't help. Mrs. Holmes, I've called and I said, would you? Yes. And I can't tell you what that's like. A number of you, all of you elders who have come and shown up always to speak and to share. I hope that those who are younger than I can see that and know the importance of doing it, not just today, but every day. The sustained actions that you all do and have done for decades. I mean, that's what it takes. So, thank you.
Today definitely, helped me better know the Holmes family, and like I said, I grew up with them. She knew my mom very well. She knows my godmoms. I know Nico. We all grew up together, so it definitely was good to hear, where you guys came from and seeing you guys still doing the same, message and pushing the same positive togetherness. So I mean, that's pretty much it. Keep it simple.